Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sherry.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to Show 65 of the Traveling Professors. Today Sherry and I are going to begin a series on Rome. We visited Rome in 2015 and spent a week there and did a lot of walking and a lot of touring. So today we're going to do one of the sections of our very first day in Rome, and that is going to be the Spanish Steps and the Mausoleum of Augustus. Here's an aerial view of our target for today, the Mausoleum of Augustus, which you can see right here. And it has been restored. It has just been recently opened to the public. They actually began restoration in 2017 in the hopes of having it finished for the 2000th anniversary of the death of Augustus, which did not happen. And it's taken a while and millions of euros. Tiber River on one side, and one of the other objects that we'll see next week is the building that houses the Altar of Peace, which was originally constructed at the time of Augustus. Well, we can't have a show without a map, so here's our map for Rome. This is actually a map given to us by the gentleman whose apartment that we rented when we stayed the week in Rome. Now we are located right here, and that there's a metro stop, the Colosseum Metro. So we're going to come out, take the metro here, and go on up to Termini, which is at the main train station. Then we will change metro lines and head over to España, or the Spanish Steps stop. And then we will look at the Spanish Steps and the boat fountain. And then we will walk through the high-dollar department store section of Rome, down to right here, which is the Mausoleum of Augustus. And of course right next to it, which is the Altar of Peace. So that's where we're headed. So we walked out of our apartment, went down the street a block and a half, walked into the Colosseum metro station. So here's what it looks like when you get down to the metro station. And one thing that I will say, when we were there, the metro was crowded all the time. But they were building a new line which has been completed. So actually at the Colosseum, there are two stations that take lines different directions. So we took the metro up to the Termini station, the main train station, and then got into a smaller area where we then took the next metro to the Spanish Steps. When we came out, here of course is the standard view of the Spanish Steps. Now the church at the top is the Church of the Holy Trinity, which was actually founded by King Charles VIII of France. And the building of it began in 1502 and was completed in 1587 by Domenico Fontana. He only put 2 courses of steps in. The complete course of steps that you see today, the 3 of them, was finalized in 1723 to 1726 by Francesco de Santos. And of course it's typical, people sit here, and of course they were doing construction on the churches. In front of the steps, you see this. You see this little half-capsized ship. It's a fountain. It's called La Barcara, or the Rotten Old Tub. It was designed by Bernini, or his father Pietro, in 1627 to 1629. That time there was a flood of the Tiber that pushed an old beaten-up boat to this very spot. And so they kind of commemorate it with this, looks like a Roman-style ship with the fountain coming out of it. So it's really kind of cute. A couple of weeks after we were there, some tourists from another country damaged it somehow and got heavily fined. And of course, everybody sits on the steps, so I have to have Where's Sherry? So here is a picture of the Spanish Steps, and see if you can find my red-headed wife. Now it's time to transition from one tourist attraction to the next. So we're going to leave the Spanish Steps, and we're going to walk down the street that you see straight ahead on the other side of where the boat is located. I will warn you, make sure that you have a deep wallet, or that you didn't bring your wallet with you, because this is a shopper's dream if you have lots of money. So as we go down this street, of course, we come upon Gucci, and then Cartier, and then we get to Ferragamo. Now that was really hard because Sherry really likes shoes. There's Hermes, Burberry, Dolce & Gabbana. So you get the idea. This was a couple of blocks of intense haute couture, to say the least. But ultimately, we get to the end of the street where we're going to have to turn to the right, and it's more mundane traffic at this point. So we have this nice little narrow pedestrian way. We're heading down that direction. Then we come to another area where we have a little more plants along the line here, and you see one of the ways in which you can go around Rome in a horse-drawn carriage. And we continue on, but way down the end of the street in this picture is where we're headed. And this is the first thing you see when you come out into the Piazza de Augustus Imperiato. And it is the building that protects the altar of peace that was originally built by Augustus to celebrate what we call Pax Romana, that was restored under Mussolini and then later on put in this building to protect it. And then across the street from it is the Mausoleum of Augustus. And here you can see it when you finally get up even with it. In the building that houses the altar of peace, they have several models. And here's a model that shows the Pantheon and how you have a street that goes straight out of the Pantheon, goes directly to the tomb of Augustus. Now that was built by Agrippa, his good friend. I would also point out that everything on the left-hand side of that road was eventually baths and parks that was built by Agrippa for the use of the people. Now, if we go down to the other end and look at the view, how this ends up getting built is after the defeat of Cleopatra in Egypt, when he went to Alexandria in 29 BCE, he saw the tomb of Alexander. And so when he came back, he came up with this idea to build a tomb in the Field of Mars based on the mausoleum of Alexander the Great, with a couple of exceptions. Now here's a picture of the model. The one in Alexandria had a square base with a Greek-style temple on the top of it with all the tombs underneath. What Augustus did is he made it circular. It's supposed to look like a tumult, which is an Etruscan burial tomb. Here's an example of what an Etruscan burial tomb looks like. There are different styles, but this is the most famous. So he's trying to make it look like he's got the old Roman part and the new Roman part. And so he ends up with this circular building on the top of it. Now, if you look at the drawing of its construction, it was circular in plan. It had several concentric rings of earth and brick that were all faced with travertine marble on the exterior. And then the dirt was thrown on top of it before they put the next level. That was then planted with cypresses on the top tier. The whole structure was supposedly capped by a conical roof with a huge bronze statue of Augustus. It was also flanked on either side by twin pink obelisks that had come from Egypt. Now, they haven't disappeared. They've just been moved to a new location. Here's one of them. This one is near the Basilica of Santa Maria Maggiore. And the other one is known as the Dusuri Fountain at the Quirinal Palace area. So it's not uncommon for ancient Roman material to end up in a different building. For example, the original bronze doors on the Senate building is on one of the church doors. You almost need a church guide so you can tell what pieces to visit if you want to see what Rome actually looked like. Then here's a model showing that design. But you can see the entrance, you can see the circular area. Then there's a conical room in the center where Augustus and other people are buried. Here's a view of what it looks like from the second level of the museum across the street. And you can see, wow, the trees are there, and they're probably later additions. But what happened to it? Well, the tradition has it that in 410, when Rome was sacked by Alaric, the pillaging Visigoths rifled all of the vaults, stole the urns, scattered the ashes, but they didn't damage the structure. However, this has no real historical foundation. We're not really sure what happened at the particular time. But we do know that by the end of the 900s AD, the mausoleum had been largely buried under earth and overgrown with trees, to the point that it was referred to as Mons Augustus. Now, a legend of the time referred to a supposed decree by Augustus, who ordered that a basket full of earth from every province of the empire was to be thrown on top of his tomb, so that he could rest on the soil of the whole world over which he ruled. Now, atop, you had the mausoleum. Well, that was turned into a chapel. First, the Archangel Michael. And then later on, there's another church built on the side. It's called the Church of Santa Maria, or San Martina. In the 12th century, it was fortified into a castle, and it remained a castle. It's kind of like what happened to Hadrian's tomb. The castle was occupied by the Colonna family, but after they're overthrown, then it's taken over by others. During the Renaissance, it became a garden, and then it goes through several other family groups, and then it was turned into an amphitheater for bullfighting and as a circus. And then ultimately, in this picture, you see its final iteration. It's turned into a concert hall and a venue for plays. And so this is what it looked like before Mussolini took power and had it taken down and restored as best they could at that particular time. So that is the background of the tomb. What happened to it between the time of Augustus' death and today? Well, let's take a walk around Augustus' tomb as it appeared in 2015. As I said before, began construction on it in 2017. So we're right across the street in the Museum of the Altar of Peace. Across the street, and we're going to have to go all the way around it to get into the entrance. So we're going to go down this side corner. You see the building. Then you can see foundation area. Remember, this would have all been covered with white marble. It was a park at one time. There's now steps that leading down from the street to this level. Then about halfway around, you have this little opening between all the brush and the trees, and you can see the round part of the lower section of his tomb. Now remember, it would have had a build-up in another building on the top of it. Now you're looking around the corner, and you're seeing another set of buildings. You get a little further away, and so they've got the construction fencing up. But in between, where there are gaps in the trees, you can get a nice view of the bottom of it. And now we're coming around almost to the entrance at this point. Now, you talk about how big is it? Well, it's 295 feet in diameter, and it's 137 feet high. Now, that would be 90 meters diameter and 42 meters in height. But we've been looking at just the lower level. When you come around to the front, come around the ceiling, you see there's that lower wall that we've been walking around, and then here you can see the main building up here at the top. Now again, they had fencing everywhere, so you just couldn't walk down in here, and they had a little viewing spot, so that's where we're heading to. Now, here's the one area where I could get most of the picture of the entrance, and then the upper window, and then you would have had the other buildings up here, the statue of Augustus. Then here's a telephoto shot trying to get a picture of what it looked like through the doors. They have it all blocked off. Now at least you can go in and visit it. And then here's a shot of the whole, the entrance. And you would have had your obelisks on either side in this particular picture. Because you couldn't walk exactly back to where I started. That was all blocked off. I had to kind of go down the street and come back up so I could get this picture of the last shot of it before returning to crossing the street. So you can see it was not in very good condition whatsoever. And even when I was there, I was wondering, surely that you could do something to have private tours of a small group that could go inside of it. But here's a couple of modern pictures showing it today, and you can see this aerial view. You can see how it's all cleaned up. The park is in much better shape. The stone has been kind of restored. But you see your entrance. You see the circular area. And then you see the core building, which is where all the people were laid to rest. And they have different venues that you can see from the inside, but there's the shot of the core. Now I would mention that, when you talk about who was buried here, we usually think of Augustus and a few other people, but there are quite a few members of the family here. First person buried there was Marcus Claudius Marcellus, who was supposed to be Julia's first husband. And then Marcus Vipsania Agrippa, that's Julia's second husband, and of course Augustus's friend and the victor at the Battle of Actium. And we have Nero Claudius Drusus, the son of Livia Drusilla, Octavia Minor, sister of Augustus, Gaius and Lucius Caesar, those are the grandsons of Augustus. Then after Augustus, we have, of course, he's buried there. Then Germanicus, the son of Antonia Minor. Drusus Julius Caesar, that's the son of Tiberius. Livia Drusilla, the wife of Augustus. Agrippina the elder, the daughter of Julia and her husband Agrippa. Julia Livilla, that's the daughter of Germanicus. Nero Julius Caesar, son of Agrippina the elder. Drusus Caesar, son of Germanicus. Tiberius, the second emperor. Antonia Minor, that's the mother of Claudius. Caligula. Julia Drusilla, that's the daughter of Caligula. Claudius, emperor. Britannicus, the son of Claudius. And the last emperor to be buried there and person to be buried there is Nerva. And then it was closed up and no one else was added. If you enter into the central corridor, this is the view that you have. You see you would have had all the little niches all around the edge here for all of the descendants of Augustus. And it's believed that the central cylinder, which of course held up the whole roof, is probably where Augustus would have been buried for all eternity. So it's quite of an interesting tomb to see once you actually get a chance to get inside and see it. When you view it today, you can go in and they have all sorts of displays in circular areas, and you kind of work your way into the central core. So here's the area in between the outer walls and the inner core. And again, have displays and pieces of marble and part of the original building. And then if you go into the core, you have all of these plaques that are associated with the different people who were buried there. And in this one square area over here, they would have had an urn. Now, the way you bury people, they cremated their dead, and then the ashes were then taken and put in the urns and then put there with another covering over the top of it. And here's an example of what that looks like. This is the urn holding the ashes of Alexander the Great's son by Roxanne. And it was in its original little tomb area, but you have the urn with the golden crown, and then it would have had another piece of stone over the top of it, completely covering it, and then you could then put a statue on top of it. So that's what you would have found. That's what it's like on the inside. Well, Sherry and I hope you enjoyed the show on the Mausoleum of Augustus. Our next show will be part 2 of 3 parts on our first day in Rome. And we'll be looking at the actual altar of peace that Augustus had built. And then we'll be walking through more of Rome until we head down to the Piazza Navona, which used to be a racing venue in ancient Roman times. Sherry and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.